good evening, everybody, and welcome to the interview room on this wonderful Sunday evening. We have an amazing program for you. Tonight, she's back, Dr. Ann Burgess and Dr. Gary Brucato. And if you're new here, put your seatbelts on. These are two of the most amazing minds in the criminal world in true crime, as well as real crime. Dr. Burgess is a legend. And of course, you know Dr. Bcato, but Dr. Ann Burgess is a renowned pioneer in the assessment and treatment of victims of trauma and abuse. She is a professor of psychiatric mental health nursing at Boston College Cornell School of Nursing, where she has about 500 students about ready to graduate. And she's a professor emeritus at the University of Pennsylvania. But on top of that, she has been declared a living legend by the American Academy of Nursing. And those are just a few of her accolades. She is one of the original mine hunters. Her work with the Behavior Science Unit in the FBI is featured in the Netflix series Mine Hunter, where the fictional character Dr. Wendy Carr is based on Ann's life and her career. She is also the recipient of her own series on Hulu about her life, Mastermind, To Think Like a Killer. If you've not seen that, get that in your in basket and view it. And she's the author of this amazing book right here, A Killer by Design, Murders, Mind Hunters, and My Quest to Decipher the Criminal Mind. We want to welcome tonight Dr. Ann Burgess. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Chris. I'm delighted to be here.
And that's just her short bio. That is her short bio. She really is a living legend. And of course, our dear friend, Dr. Gary Bcato, who is also a visiting scholar from Boston College, where he collaborates with Dr. Ann Burgess, or had collaborated with her in relationship to what we're going to talk tonight, and Dr. Victor Petrecka on for some forensic research, where they examine crimes such as murder, including serial killing, sexual offenses, mutilation, and dismemberment, and of course, the insanity defense. Gary is also currently a consultant on a grant-funded project with Dr. Ann and Victor, studying the exact same thing we're going to talk about tonight. And that's why we could not think of any two better people to have here to talk about little Emily Pike and her case. He studies, Dr. Brucato also studies how violent thoughts and actions emerge in psychotic versus non-psychotic persons. And he is also the co-author of the Columbia University Mass Murder Database, which is the largest mass murder database of information that's ever been collected. About 116 years or 119 years worth of data. Every time I talk about a case, he says, let me check that. And he checks his form. And he and Dr. Michael Stone wrote this book here, The New Evil, Understanding the Emergence of Modern Violent Crime. All of these books, all of their bios, this was just the short run, are in the links below. And we're grateful to have him here as well. So, Dr. Gary, welcome to the program here.
Thank you. And I don't know about you, but listening to that, I'm exhausted. Listening to my own bio, I'm tired. I need to take a nap. You know, Ann, don't you have another book? I think I saw on Amazon. It's up for pre-order.
Yeah,
You've got a new one.
We do.
Oh, what's exciting.
Yeah,
what's
and
that
she's
one?
Also going to be this year at CrimeCon promoting that book, and as well as Karen and I are going to attend CrimeCon this year. And if anybody knows anybody up there, I can't for the life of me get a speaker opportunity. If anybody knows anybody, I'd like to talk about some this problem here. or even, you know what I would love, Ann? I'd love to put together a panel where I MC you guys talking about not only your careers, but the missing and murdered Indigenous women problem across the country.
Sure. I'll bring it up with my contact.
Well, you guys in the chat, don't you think that would be a fascinating panel with Dr. Gary and Dr. Petreka, and maybe even we'll get Greg Cooper from the Cold Case Foundation up there. And I bet you we could get Jason, who is the homicide task force commander. I had him on the show about 1.5 years ago.
Oh,
Anyway, I think that would really be a fascinating panel to listen to everybody, sir. And of course, I'd like to be the small potato chip and just be the guy asking the questions. How about that?
Sounds good.
Okay, so tonight, wow. First brush through Emily Pike's case. Let's start with ladies first, of course. Dr. Burgess, what are your thoughts in relationship to having a chance to, I know we're going to dive in here, but what's your initial assessment in terms of what we're looking at here? I know you guys have been studying the missing, murdered Indigenous women problem up there in BC.
Right. No, and that's what's important is we looked at over 30 cases each in the age range. We had 18 and under was the child cases. We had an elder group, adult group went up to 50, and then the elder group went over 50. So this would very much fall into the first category of under 18. She's only 14, very young, and looks her age when you see photos of her. And it looks like she was running away from a group home, which is not necessarily unusual. We need to talk more about that, what the motive was there. But she certainly encounters a terrible situation. And I look forward to talking about that. I read one place where she was supposed to be meeting a boy that she had met before, and the word boy was used, so it wasn't an adult, if that's true. Somebody that played a guitar, that was just in one of the write-ups. So this is really, really important in terms of when kids are troubled. It also said she had mental health issues. We need to get into that because that's just putting them in a group home isn't the best way to handle a mental health issue. And it looks like she had visited her mother earlier, had run away a couple of other times. So all of that's going to be very important to see if we can sift through and find out what type of person, profile, if you will, the type of person that she encountered. But using our studies from the missing and murdered Native American Indigenous group, we did the women first, the females first, and we're just ready to run the data on the men. But anyway, so we can use what we learned from the 18 and under group tonight. Talk about that.
Awesome. Yeah, that's going to be an amazing discussion. Dr. Gary, first brush, first thoughts.
Well, I think, first of all, I think Ann and I are two people who are unusually suited to discuss this because our work, our research has focused on cases that involve dismemberment, which is a term that we help to define formally. We can talk about that to distinguish it from other offenses like mutilation cases and things like that. And we've studied with Dr. Petreka what it means when people perpetrate that particular offense. And of course, there's the Native people element that is very dear to us. And then, of course, we focus so heavily on the type of offender who would target a child, perhaps in a serial way, and commit these kinds of offenses. What I think is, I'll just throw out there, and of course we're going to get into the details, is that I think that the loneliness and the longing for connectivity in this child, which led to the running away and wanting to go see someone, whoever that was, family, this boy, whatever, was taken advantage of by some type of offender that probably opportunistically picked her up and gave her the false impression that someone cared about her, and then proved that, that was not the case. She reminds me of a phrase that Sherlock Holmes used about a woman who goes missing, where he says that she's a stray chicken in a world of foxes. Well, I think that's exactly what happened. And we're going to have to talk about it, but someone took advantage opportunistically, I think.
Yeah. So so let's approach this from a couple of different levels, right? We'll do the high level, maybe a brief victimology, and then we can talk about, some of the research that you guys are finding and, in relationship to the adolescent situation, because she is 14 here. And, how does that correlate into what the crime scene is going to tell us? I have a little video about how, what the area looks like. And then maybe we can, kind of get into this thought process of, the what ifs in terms of, how these types of groups, how we all operate from, I'll call it from an academic investigative analysis side. I don't know if that's a term, but we'll call it that tonight. But so, on a high level, Ron, these are factual in nature. So these are facts. What we know from the Mesa Police Department on January 27th, 2025, which was a Monday at approximately, when she was reported at 8:19 in the evening. She was last seen on the 27th about 1900, or excuse me, 1900 at 7 o'clock. There is no gang involvement or relationship connection in relationship to the victim. And then that's the RP. So the report basically says that Mesa PD got a call on the 27th, approximately 2019, to respond to a missing person. Comments indicating a juvie AWOL, which was missing approximately 30 minutes prior to this call. So it sounds like she left around 7:50 p.m. approximately out of the group home, or at least that's when she was noticed. Now, at that time of year in January in Arizona, it gets dark early. So there's a high probability that she was out in either out of the facility into the street or wherever. The reporting party identified, that she appeared to have gone out of her bedroom window at the group facility home and had not come in. The window screen was pushed out from the inside, and that she had also had a history of running away in the past. She did not indicate, i.e. the RP, the reporting party did not indicate there were any exigent circumstances, and that Emily was reported to be a 14-year-old Native American female, approximately 4'10", 115 pounds, with medium length brown hair. She did not have a cell phone, according to this report. And she was last seen wearing a pink and gray shirt. The RP reported the last time she ran away, she was located at Fitch Park, which this officer went and checked that park, and he did not find her in that area, which is right around the corner from where the group home is, for FYI.
Chris, can I just ask something, because
Yep.
it allows us to immediately take something off the table that, people, they speculate in all kinds of ways and whatever. So in other words, there is absolutely no evidence that I'm aware of the potential of abduction from the home. In other words, she willingly went out the window. It appears that she pushed the screen out and went out. In other words, just to put that out there, the first step of leaving the home is something that's done willingly by this child, based on what we know.
Do we have any?
Right?
Well, Gary and Chris, the other thing would be, were there any other footprints outside the window? Certainly, we would hope they would do careful in case there was somebody waiting for her. I only mention that because one place said she was going to meet someone. But at any rate, was she the only one set of footprints moving away from the window?
I don't have that answer, and I did not see that answer and in any of these reports. So
okay.
Yeah, right now that's in the question mark column.
Right. And weather, do we have a weather report for that night?
I did have it. I don't, going to look it up again. But it was.
To be clear, Chris, I guess what I'm getting at is even if the child is lured, if there's some sort of meeting that's used to make her leave, she willingly goes out the window herself.
Yes. That's what all indications are.
And I think that's very important. To get that out of the way, because there's going to be all kinds of speculation about people knowing she was there, busting the window open, taking her out, the whole thing. I think that's got to be off the table. But the possibility of a preconceived, meeting, a prearranged meeting is a possibility. But
there also seems to be just one person that gives information to the police, another quote friend, that. So that at least there was one person that had a little bit of knowledge of her from the victimology standpoint, which is kind of interesting. If she had been had left the house several times, you would hope that they had a little better understanding of her.
Yeah, and mom reported that she was not notified until about 7 days after her disappearance that she was no longer in the group home.
7 days?
7 days, approximately.
I didn't know. Okay.
Yes, and so that causes me, because there were some reports that she was back up on the reservation, but mom is saying, no, I didn't even know she was gone, which is, for an investigative analysis aspect, right? Obviously, that's a plus, because now we have a time she disappeared and a time she was recovered, which was February 14th, 2025, off of Highway 60, which is approximately 80 to 90 miles thereabouts from the group home. So that kind of indicates maybe, doing the victim continuum, that she's a high risk, potentially exposed out onto the street.
Right.
At that time. So if she didn't make it home,
she's a basically invisible human being, Chris.
Right.
I mean, someone who was trying to find a victim that was not going to be missed for a little while could not have done a better job if he had set out to do it on purpose. If this was somebody opportunistically picked up, that's deeply disturbing too. But one also has to keep on the table the possibility that somebody saw this as a pool from which to draw a victim that would be essentially invisible. Are the other people in the group home also indigenous, or is this just happens to be the background of this particular individual?
I don't have the answer to that one. I don't have the answer.
And don't you think go ahead, Chris.
No, you're all right. Go, you, Gary. Go.
I was just saying, and don't you think the invisibility of the child is a critical aspect of the victimology?
Right, and what you're saying is nobody notices her, and because the group home is not isolated, is right. The other buildings around there, and she left without a cell phone, and she left. Hopefully, had shoes on, and nobody sees her. I mean, that's for 7 days. That's amazing.
Well, nobody reported to her mother for 7 days. But the shoe point, Anne, is really interesting because they don't mention her shoes. They only said she was last seen wearing a pink and gray shirt. So that is a really good catch, even right from the get-go here. And so talking about the invisibility aspect of this, I mean, what is your research team what are some of the common denominators the research team is coming up with in terms of this particular challenge with the missing, murdered, indigenous, we'll call them the juveniles, adolescents at this point?
Right, because you want to try to, in this case, you got a pretty long period that no one reports her. But so what happens to her in the interim in our study, we certainly did have cases. In fact, we have one that they still haven't found. Well, we have more than one that they still haven't found either the remains or a suspect. So this does happen. There really aren't. The invisibility is a very interesting and very appropriate word to characterize some of this. They are just not picked up. And on this one, she's only 5'10". She's tiny, really, 115 pounds. So she's not very big. I mean, somebody could actually lift her up, if they were going to get back to Gary's concern about was she abducted or how does she get from wherever the group home is to the where she's ultimately found her remains. Yeah.
Gary, dovetail.
Chris, I remember once I was talking somewhere about indigenous people and I used the word invisible, and somebody who was indigenous told me afterwards that it's a term that's frowned upon, but the preference is to say unseen, because invisible implies that the person in and of him or herself is inherently not of value and is invisible, but the blame should be put on the people who are not noticing them. So that the unseen was the word. So I think to be sensitive, perhaps I should say she's unseen. And I think it's important. I understood that part really. That thing the person said to me was very important. But I think, and the other thing that's important to emphasize is that only 5% of cases involving indigenous people are reported in the media. 95% don't even make it into a paper. And you know that if a case gets national attention, it becomes a little easier to solve it because the whole country's got their eyes open. The whole country has its eyes open looking. I mean, think, for example, about a case like Bcato. I mean, you couldn't, open up a newspaper without seeing full-page spreads on Bcato. Now, that's an awful case. My heart goes out to the family, of course. But there are indigenous cases where things happen that are beyond imaginable, and we don't even know. People like Ann and I and you, we hear about them, but the public, isn't that true, Ann? That it's really quite shocking.
Yeah, I certainly would agree with that. I think the longest that, especially on a child, they usually get that reported quite early. And I guess we'd have to look and see if Chris knows this. For that 7 days, was it not reported that there was nothing going on? I think the other thing that works against this young child is that she had done this before. And so the kind of bias is going to be, oh, well, she's done it before. She will find her. She'll come back, that kind of thing. And I think that could have been one of the reasons that they don't go right after her. But maybe they did. We don't know. It's just, you're right, that the mother was the only one that said she wasn't notified for 7 days, but hopefully other people were, like the police.
The group home immediately reached out that she was reported right away to Mesa Police Department. That's what this report is. Okay.
Good. Okay.
However, the second piece of that is that 7 days, there's a gap there that the parents and the family are not aware that she's missing. Okay. And so therefore, law enforcement has some search efforts going, but they're considering it almost as if it's a missing person, a missing runaway juvenile. Okay.
Right.
And whereas what the parents' contention was, had they been notified on the res. Now, also one other piece on the victimology here, dad's in custody for an unrelated situation. So he's been in, incarceration. Mom is, reported to be trying her best, to live in the circumstances that they live. Her daughter was having some challenges, so they thought it was best, based on, consultation with counselors and others, to put her into this group therapy home to kind of, level set her mental stability a little bit more. So, but it sounded like she had access, to, some boy and other conversations going on. So I think we need to consider the fact that she could have been opened up to predatory behavior via, the internet, / connection. And like you were talking about,
It's a
Gary,
good question, Chris. Yeah, it's a good question. It's disturbing though, because as I'm listening to you, what becomes clearer and clearer and clearer is that the profound tragedy of this case is that a person who might have been strolling along a highway or whatever with a background like that, an absent father in a group home, probably hasn't had any attachments that are stable, lonely, in need of some love, support, whatever. If somebody came along who smelled that and opened the door of the car and said, I'm a helper. I'm here to help you. I care about you, whatever. You see the awful, what's truly predatory about it, that idea of almost instinctively knowing that this is a lost soul. Come on in. I'm here to help you. And then to do Lord knows what. It just becomes such an ugly thing to envision. But I can't help but think that victimology, that loneliness, that detachment created the vulnerability point that somebody took advantage of one way or another. I mean, wouldn't you say, Anne? That seems to be the doorway that someone used.
Right. And we don't know whether it goes from she gets outside of the group home, she gets on, hopefully on to like a sidewalk or something like that. Somebody could then, with a car, pick her up and grab her, and we don't know. I'm thinking of cases that we
Right.
have had where they have done that they see someone walking alone and they're able to abduct them. Not abduct.
But you say something extremely important, Anne, because if you remember, like obviously the work of Ken Lanning, for example, the profile of a person that would snatch a child without a word is totally different than the profile of somebody who would groom them. One
Right.
requires social skills. The other is probably an oddball local who's more disorganized. And I think that's why that question of did they just open the door and say snatch, or did it take a little cleverness? And that's where I think it's going to be so important when we think about this case tonight to think about are the signs pointing to an organized person or a disorganized person to give us an idea of how the child was taken. And that's where I think when we walk through it, Chris, we'll have to say like, isolating the child, getting rid of evidence and throwing it in a ravine or whatever. I mean, these are things that start to sound a little more organized. Wouldn't you say, Anne? I mean, isolating somewhere and all that, but it's tricky. I mean, I'd like to hear your thoughts on it.
Well, I think the piece of information that'd be really, really important is what did she do on the previous times when she left the group home? In other words, there could be some grooming that went on by somebody who was this boy. Maybe she had met someone. It might not be a boy. It might be an older person. I don't mean, boy, we tend to think of someone her own age. Could well be somebody not. But what did she do? How did she do it? What the park? I think that's very, very important. It's got to be, I think, Chris, you said it's pretty close to the group home. That's probably where she first, unless somebody had taken her somewhere before that she was first there. And you would hope that there was what day of the week? Do we know what day of the week it was? A weekend or during the week?
Monday.
It was a Monday. Okay. But anyway, that's going to be important, is who was there on that Monday. Have they been able to find any witnesses, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah. And just for just a clarity in relationship to what we're talking about here tonight. If you've just joined us, I've got Dr. Em Burgess and Dr. Gary Bcato with us this evening to talk about Emily Pike. We got folks just coming in here. We're almost about 1,600 people here now. So, but that said, also we're aware of some feedback going on. It's we didn't have enough earbuds, so we're aware of it. We see it in the chat, but just so you guys know, we're working our best on this. Okay, so this Fitch Park, though, in this report, Ann, it says the RP reported last time she ran away, she was located near Fitch Park, and this time they checked at that time with negative results. So, so on Valentine's Day, February 14th, 2025, approximately 80 to 90 miles away, which, we talked about. She's discovered by some hikers who were coming off of a hiking trail, and they look over and see some what appears to be contractors' trash bags. And that contractor trash bag, they poke around a little and discover human remains. In that trash bag, her torso and her I'm trying to be sensitive for the family just in case they're listening, but at the same time, for purposes of our work, we have to, unfortunately, put it out there. So her head and her torso is discovered. They do identity through her teeth and positively identify her as Emily Pike. She'd been dismembered. The head was dismembered from the torso, but it was in the same bag. The hands and the arms are still missing. They've not discovered those yet.
What about legs? Were legs attached to the torso?
I don't have that one.
Okay.
They've just reported the torso. And so immediately on the 19th, Mesa PD gets a call saying, hey, and that's this report right here, where they get a call at approximately 8:02 hours. And it's a follow-up stating that something has changed from their Jane Doe, that they found a Jane Doe. And this officer ends up contacting BIA, the homicide unit, and talks to the agent in charge, Agent Summers. And he states to Mesa that the remains were found near the Gila County Indian Reservation, which is the San Carlos Apache Reservation. And then north of that is the White Mountain Apache Reservation. So this area is right between both reservations. It's right in between. And so they say that they asked for contact information, and ultimately it is discovered that she is that it is Emily.
She's Apache, right, Chris?
She's Apache, yeah, correct. From the San Carlos Reservation, which is closer to the valley and closer to the home where she left. And the reservation on the other side of that is the White Mountain, which is headed towards an area called Sholo.
Yes.
Which, by the way, that town was named after a card game, Sholo. And that's a true statement.
Like show you. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, he calls on the 28th just to verify, hey, are you sure? And they say, yes, for sure, that she's still missing. She's not here. They contact mom. They went to all the, I received a voicemail from Lisa that she responded to the Rock Teen Center in Mesa, where she had also gone in the past. So to your point, Ann, they started to do, this follow-up in relationship to, hey, where was she last seen? Where was she last heard from? And they had not seen or heard from her since she left the group home. And that at 1500 hours, he reached out to a gal named Lisa, and she said that Emily was still missing and there was no new information on her whereabouts. Now that's the 29th. So that is, building up this case that says, this is her. It's going to be her. They started looking at Facebook posts on the 11th. They start finding that her mom was also now looking for her. And they didn't have any information about the mother at that time. However, ultimately, they do reach the San Carlos Tribal Police, and they make contact with the mother. And this is when she's actually brought into the full circle about her daughter. So this is a sad situation, even at this point, right? I mean, it's a communication problem. but what are they operating under at that point, right? I think their frame of mind from an investigative prospect is they're thinking this is a runaway juvenile. She's done it in the past. She's trying to make it up into the reservation, or she's run away with a boy or something to that effect. But it's a much more obviously evil situation here. So out of curiosity, what are you finding are any commonalities in relationship to the kids that are being found deceased?
Well, I can just say in our sample of the young females under 18, what is very unusual is we did not have anyone dismembered. This is very, very different than the cases we saw, number one. So she certainly encountered someone that, and I can think in the males or the suspects or whoever they were there was no indigenous killer, if you will. Usually it was on the reservation that something would have happened, but we didn't have a lot of adolescent. Gary, can you think of any without?
No, I think what you're saying is spot on, but I also think that one of the really interesting things is the lack of the frequency of sexual motivations in those killings. And I have to tell you, I don't think I'm going out on too much of a limb in saying that it is almost impossible to believe that Emily was targeted for a reason that did not involve the sexual. And I have to tell you that the behaviors that were exhibited by this offender look a lot more like the behavior of a serial offender, where this was not the person's first rodeo with doing this kind of thing. You remember, Anne, in our studies of dismemberment, mutilation, so forth, that most of it was defensive, that it was done for getting rid of bodies or identifying, although it is very interesting that the head and the teeth are left without that kind of butchery that would be used to eliminate that evidence. But it does suggest somebody that was trying to get rid of somebody to fit them into a bag and dump them and all of that. There definitely seems to be some kind of serial nature. And that's where, this other point keeps rattling around in my head, which is that, Anne, in your own work, in your iconic serial killer work, there's this point that always gets used on the TV shows and everything, right? That when you're profiling, serial killers tend to hone in on their own racial categories in terms of victims. But this question has always bothered me is, I don't think that's true with Native victims. I feel like Native victims get targeted because they tend to be unseen and are easily targeted by offenders. And I think if we were to study it, we'd probably find, my hypothesis is that when there are serial killers that kill them, they are usually going to be non-native serial killers that target them because they see them as easy targets. Now, would that jive with your own sense of what's probably true?
Well, yes. The other thing I'd want to know is what's the composition in the area around where the group home is. That will also be important, just at primarily one type. For example, this was not the reservation, right? She was not on the reservation. It looked like maybe heading towards the reservation. So what is the non-indigenous population there? Are they white? Are they Hispanic, et cetera, et cetera? That seems to be something. It's highly unusual that this would be a indigenous on indigenous. It's so brutal. It just doesn't make sense. We haven't seen anything like that. I would have to look and see. But it sounds like it's going to be a non-indigenous person. Or the other important thing is, and again, I'm trying to be sensitive for your audience, Chris, but was the dismemberment done? What type of instrument would be used? Was it like a knife? Was it a machete? I mean, machetes are going to be much more characteristic for gangs, in cases. You could say maybe this was a gang initiation where they do have to go out and kill someone. The MS-13s are noted for that. But is there any gang activity in that area? That would be another question the police should easily be able to answer. So I think that there's a lot there. We would want to know more about what was in how she was dismembered, what was in the bags, what was left. Was there any insect activity? In other words, had she been left outside for a while and then, or whatever, that would be real important because something happened for the time that she was gone. They didn't give any information about how decomposed the body was.
Right.
Again, that would give us some idea of whether she was kept for a period of time. So, I mean, these are just the things that when you're going through a rule in, rule out kind of thing. But to get back to you, Gary, in terms of the racial aspect of the suspect or suspects, that is where just regular statistics could be very helpful.
And I think, and to your point about the tool, one of the things that jumped out at me immediately about this is the use of contractor bags.
Right.
We start to imagine, does this person have access to tools that would be used for the butchery? And you also, I think we could say, first of all, I know, this sounds obvious, but I think in the profile, I have to say that it is impossible for me to believe that this is not a male. So, we're picturing a male, probably not indigenous, probably not the person's first rodeo with doing this kind of thing, probably is going to be targeting people of a certain age because that is their penchant. This is a tiny girl. She was like 4'10", I think, or 4'11", very, petite and would have looked very vulnerable and so forth walking along, right? And the other thing is, if there's contractor bags, I mean, first of all, I think it's probably a safe bet to say that this person has a vehicle into which the person was lured or snatched. And why contractor bags? I mean, is the idea that when you're moving the victim, if somebody were to ask you to open your vehicle, it would just look like you had some work bags in there? Is the idea that that's what's convenient and what happens to be around? Did the crime happen in the vehicle and you just used what was ambient, And I think you said something, in passing that's very important, which is that it is entirely possible that this child was kept a little while to do God knows what and then eliminated. And, that's the other piece of this. I mean, because if you're snatching a child, we know from a lot of research that the goal is not the killing. The killing is to get rid of the witness, or the killing is because you've asserted so much force that somebody has died. But we know from like the work of Hazelwood and people like that. I just edited and the chapter for your book, right? On I won't use the word because we can't, but the R word book that you did, right? YouTube won't let us say it, but the book on SA. And in there, I reviewed Hazelwood's writing about that, which I think was very important. So I think we have to imagine somebody whose goal was sexual and probably to keep the child to do whatever for a little amount of time and then eliminates her. And this would be probably post-mortem butchery that goes on. I don't think it's part of the thrill or anything. Also, statistically, most of these killings are going to be by strangulation. That's something that I want to know about because, the head is detached. So I don't know, Anne, how much they'd be able to tell from what's left of the neck. But Chris, you would know from an investigative perspective, if you have a decapitation, that particular form of dismemberment, it is a form of dismemberment. Can you determine asphyxiation, strangulation, things like that? Like petechiae in the eyes, things like that could tell us.
Petechiae may be available as well as the hyoid bone, but if he or she, hit that bone and it's been destroyed, then the probability of, determining exactly what happened or would be difficult to assess.
So the decapitation could be a form of covering up. that that's what you've done.
Yeah, or right. I mean, just it could be just viciousness in of
It
itself.
could be right. It
You know,
could be viciousness. I
that
agree with you. See, and this is where the whole question of organized and disorganized becomes very important, because to me, there would be a huge difference between somebody who was doing that because they were trying to neaten up a situation, get away with things, conceal a body, whatever, and a more disorganized situation where an odd person, some local guy just opportunistically sees a child, opens the door to the vehicle, snatches her, does whatever, and is sloppy. This idea of going to an isolated place with bags to hide the evidence and all of that, it pushes me a little bit more in the direction of somebody who's done this before, is familiar with the area, knew that there'd be kind of privacy there to do this. And look how long it took to find the body. I mean, there was some success with, that guy was probably out of Dodge, but well before, but Chris, your point earlier about that this is probably somebody who knows the area is very important too. Because
yeah.
how the heck would I mean, you've been there. Is it a place that the average person would find by accident?
No. And so let's take a look at that so you two have a better understanding of terms of the geography profiling aspect of
Yeah.
this. And
Such a
so
sad
also
case, Chris.
one other thought is the police have and her height, Gary, to your point, was 4'10" 150
Yeah, so
pounds.
tiny.
But yeah, she's just a little kid. And
No.
but this area in of itself, there's a turnoff off of the Highway 60. It's near mile marker 277. It's just kind of, there's a fire road that goes up, and it's like one of those things where, remember in high school where people would just like pull off the side of the road and party and, create a little fire pit and that kind of stuff. This kind of has that feel to it, that it's known, but you really have to know it to where her body was found. So let me take you there real fast on this video that I did, and I'll stop it as we're going along for your comments. Um,
Look at her.
so the San Carlos tribe and friends and family and neighbors have established this little memorial to the entrance of this area where Emily is found. I muted me so that we don't bore the audience. But I want you to look at the terrain, right? It's kind of a high desert. You can see it's going up. And if you keep going up that road, it takes you into the other reservation in the White Mountains. And so if you come down, it takes you to San Carlos. So the suspect would have had to come up and then turn right into this geographic region here.
Does that soil, that terrain leave footprints, tire tracks, things like that easily?
Yes. Yep.
They would see if a vehicle had left the road and
Yep. But
gone there.
the challenge is the day she was discovered.
Exactly.
It's a couple of weeks later. And so, to kind of tie it into, something.
Yeah.
Oh, this is the boring part that talked about me and BIA. I went past it.
Did the autopsy report get published yet?
Not yet, ma'am.
Not yet. Okay.
We could probably get them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Looks like a lot of people are visiting, Chris, with all these flowers and things.
Well, and that was an interesting piece of this puzzle, right? You can understand, the tribal members and friends and families and those, from the Apache Nation showing up and showing their respect. The one thing, and as all three of us know, I mean, we're working with the missing and murdered indigenous women problem and challenge is, since I've been involved in it, they're just such loving and caring people that a dismemberment, to hear you say, Anne, with all your research, You haven't found one yet. This is the
No.
first that at least right now in the research phase.
Yes, this is
So
very
this,
unusual. Yeah.
Odd.
yeah, so this is a whole new level here for this problem. And to pick this type of area, it's between the two reservations.
Yeah.
Does that tell us something about the suspect?
Yes, definitely does. Yes.
I
So
knew
I
how
you
agree.
were
far,
gonna say that.
how far are they roughly from each of the in miles? How far would you say?
Probably 10, 5,
10,
10,
10 miles. Okay.
thereabouts.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe somebody in the chat who's part of each of those nations, would you give us an exact if you know it?
And if I understand correctly, you're suggesting somebody who might have, even if there was an opportunistic element and she sort of fell into the net, might have been fishing for a certain
Yeah.
type of victim because of the location.
Right.
So was the suggestion being that he's prowling for an unseen person?
Right. I think the other thing that's so important, and they would be, should be able to give it to us at some point, is how long they think she had been dead. In other words, how long that would tell us more about how long she was kept, and then
Right.
how they made the decision. This is a very planned
Right.
site, if you will. Do we have how many bags there were, Chris? Do you know, or just
There was one bag, and they're missing us. They still, again, have not found, the other remains.
Right.
So,
Okay.
so there's an assumption there's a second bag somewhere.
Sure. Yeah.
So Anne,
The
you're
other-
suggesting a little organized.
Oh, I'm suggesting organized. Yeah. The other thing that would give you some idea of how long it had been there, it sounds like it was just found right soon after it was left. That there was no, you would expect to have some animal scratchings to get into the bag. It doesn't sound like that happened. So it was done within a day, right? Of the 14th of February. She found on Valentine's Day, which in and of itself is important date, if you will.
Yeah, Chris and I were talking about that before the show, and a lonely time for some types of people. Yes, but so maybe
what's
that is
interesting-
significant. Yeah.
Yeah, and what's interesting about this area here, where she is, so this is a fire road, and so and Gary, you can see it go all the way up to the mountain. See how in the distance there, how it
Yep.
breaks the grass on both sides. So if so, the suspect turns up this road and he drives up this road, and you'll see in the distance some of our friends in some vehicles, but I cut them out so that
Sure.
we wouldn't, be problematic. But you can see now off to the right there, which I'm pointing at, is a little like corral for cows and maybe horses. So it's also known to a rancher. It looks like that's part of his property over there. But so you get through that cattle crossing, and then you go up a little bit further here on this road that you're seeing, and you turn to the right, and it takes you over to where they can drop cattle, horses or whatever. And so there's some corrals over there.
Okay. Was the bag just left like in the middle of all that sand or dirt, or was
Yeah,
it near one of those bushes?
Well, actually, it was near a bush, in the middle of a bush, and it was near a walking trail, but not on the trail.
Oh, okay.
So a little bit of an effort at concealment,
Yes.
Minimal.
whereas a more disorganized person would have just left her out in the open and
Right.
not a bit. So I think that starts to push us towards organized, which helps us in the envisioning what happened here, because it is much more likely that this person talked to her a little bit to get her to get into the vehicle, as opposed to snatching, that kind of thing. A little more like that. It's a very sad and disturbing thing. But Chris, the other thing that immediately comes to mind as I'm looking at this and thinking about this, and I think you'd agree, is that this is the type of killer who would come back here,
Yes.
who would visit.
Return to the scene if there are others
Right.
there. right. Unless he's very smart and knows that oftentimes they do return to the scene.
Although I don't think, I mean, this is, let's say, I don't think this is a college professor. I think this is a person,
Oh,
who's probably a more average intellect, things like that. But I think based on that type of offender, it's almost impossible to believe that he wouldn't come back there and take a look at the memorial and sit and look at
So
the
I have a
ditch and the
question
whole thing. Yeah.
to tap into your minds.
Hmm.
Contact point, probably. So the police mentioned an intersection down in the valley. So I think they probably have her on video walking. I don't think they have her getting into a car, but there's a high probability in my mind right now that the contact point is closer to the group home versus anywhere once you get onto the 60 and it starts taking you up that mountain. Thoughts, Ann?
yeah, I would agree. I think she was picked up fairly quickly. I would
Okay.
agree. There would have been somebody had seen something. There would have been more. I think you'd get more witnesses of something,
Okay.
unless they're just not telling us.
Right. And so at this point, that puts us down towards the valley in terms of initial, contact point. And then there's the dump site here. Thoughts on, again, just to reiterate, known to the offender? Your thought?
Right. Where is you said that there's a rancher. Where's his home or whatever? We have any known buildings of any kind in this area, what we're looking at right now? Or is that
Actually,
exactly where the bag is found?
Yep. You're going to see it here in a second.
Oh,
So
okay.
this is the kind of brush. The bag is found in the middle of like one of those brushes right there, like to the left. It's just
Okay.
kind of like thrown there. And so you'll see that the road that I go up is actually where they discover her.
Okay.
And I'm going to, well, we can talk offline some other things, but it goes up and you can see there were a couple of fire pits on the other side of this ridge here and back as you first came in. This gives you another area. If you were to go and keep going up that 60, this is how the terrain rapidly changes.
Wow. Yeah. Right.
It's
Okay.
like the kind of place, Chris, that when nightfall comes, it's like can't see your hand in front of your face.
Pitch black.
Pitch black. Yeah. Yeah.
Pitch black.
Now, this
And
was
very
certainly
sacred
not-
area for the Apache Nations. Very sacred area. And so it's almost one of the thoughts that I had was it's almost an insult to drop her.
Yeah.
I agree. This is something, absolutely agree with that.
Yeah.
It's an insult to the tribes.
Well, I don't think she was even human in this killer's eyes, Anne. I mean, this reminds me of when David Parker Ray used to say that after he killed a victim, that it was like throwing away the wrapper to candy bar or a pack of cigarettes. And it's a horrible thing to think about, but that's how you have to imagine this type of offender. Is that, I mean, she was just, this is just a carcass. Couldn't care less. And I think we really have to drive that home, that is not a person operating under some situational duress that kills someone. That's a person with a fantasy and a paraphilia that's going to keep doing it. And the reason I was asking, you don't think so, Chris?
No, I'm answering that question. I wasn't.
Kari's question.
No, you're fine.
And I was thinking, Chris, that this is where the disorganized, organized thing comes in, because if with a more disorganized offender, I would guess that the person was probably on the registry in the local area, that there was some sort of person who had other crimes against kids, around there. But with an organized offender, heaven knows, I mean, this guy could be, interstate. He could be, somebody who just wanders the highways. He could be somebody who is a worker that's kind of itinerant. He could be somebody that I mean, and wouldn't you say? I mean, anything goes if he's an organized guy. He could be from anywhere.
He could be right, because
He's got to
we're
know that
looking
area.
right because we're looking at something that's a good 80, 90 miles away from the group home, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
This guy gets around, Chris, and he may not have ever been arrested for doing anything. If he's sneaky enough, let me put it this way: I have no doubt he has a history of it before, but I don't know if he's ever been caught for it.
Yeah, he's
Like,
just
you
going to
don't do
be,
this
maybe
once.
he's on the radar. I think it's a
For other
50-50, right? It could be somebody who's obviously very efficient at this,
Yeah.
based on obviously the dismemberment aspect of this murder. But at the same time, you know, I don't know if he's a Rex Heuermann who just popped up one day. And then once they get him, they start looking into his background. And what say you? What do you
Yeah, because I think that I would hope that they would have a list of persons in the area that would be known for this, because this is highly unusual on the dismemberment piece. She was not that, she was small. She could have just been left after she was killed, and that didn't happen. So again, that leads me to think that a lot more went on with her over those 4 weeks.
Yes.
Is it? Yeah, a little about 4 weeks. If indeed the body is not terribly decomposed, kind of thing. And of course, they haven't. Where is the other? Is they keep certain parts of the body that her arms could have been from fighting him or whatever, could have been injured, bruises, whatever. So I think that that is where they need to. I think, didn't I read one thing that they had a murder of a man near that area?
4 years earlier.
Oh, 4 years earlier. Okay. Oh, yeah. There you go.
And he was also Native American, found shot in his car at that turnoff just before you turn into the cattle.
Well, there you go. Okay.
Isn't that interesting, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. And just left there. No, not put in a bag or anything like that.
No,
Just
he was shot in the car. So
right.
the authorities are saying right now they're not connected. But again, I think, for the sake of our panel here, I think we would say, well, let's just keep this over here.
Yeah.
Sure.
And let's find out what the circumstances, you know, the environment situation is on that problem.
Right.
And see if there's a
Oh.
correlation. But
What I think, Chris, is we have case linkage that hasn't been established yet. Like this is a situation where, like, they put someone in codex or something, and they discover there have been priors or things like that. But I think, and Chris, you'd both agree. I hope you'd both agree that you don't just start doing this one day. I mean, obviously, you always have to have a first. But this looks pretty sophisticated to me. I mean, this is somebody that I think has certainly had offenses against, like, hemophilic offenses against kids that are probably early teens, something like that. People who favor that population tend to not be going after 4 or 5-year-olds. You know what I mean? It's like they tend to like young teens. And I think that there probably have been other cases that are not being linked because the victimology is so different, and they're probably all over the place. But I mean, and wouldn't you think this is the type of person it turns out they've been all over and targeting.
Right. Oh, yes, I would agree with that. Do they have anything on touch DNA, any kind of fingerprints,
Yeah,
Chris,
right.
anything like that? And if you're thinking in terms of someone who's done this before, they could certainly use CODIS to run it through. If they have it, touch DNA should work because you can get that off of a body unless it's been cleaned. We don't have enough
Right.
information on that.
yeah,
And
there's
Chris, you
still,
talked about Rex. Oh, go ahead, Chris, please.
no, that's all right. I mean, there's still a lot of pieces that, you know, we're just kind of getting into this one that I agree with you that we need a lot more information. But so here's the turn in the road.
Yeah.
Okay. You can see the terrain doesn't change much.
Right.
It's very consistent all the way up. So if we go up this road, this is the area where they discover her, where the hikers found her.
Okay. Are you there yet, or you're still walking towards it?
Yes, and you'll see this refrigerator here.
Uh-huh.
It's an old fridge with the door off, and they use it for a target.
Oh,
And so the impression that I had right away was, okay, this is a known dump area.
Right.
This is where, folks come, they throw their
Right.
stuff up here, but you have to know it's there. You
right.
know, because
Right.
if you, right, Gary, you see it from the street, you don't really
Right.
see it, but you
That's
come
what's
in.
bothering me the most about the case. That's the most troubling thing because everything else that we're saying fits with a kind of itinerant person that may be killing a whole bunch of people or at least SA against a whole bunch of young people or opportunistic victims. But you can't get around the idea that this person knows a little too much about the local area. That's the one thing that's really bugging me. And so, you know, isn't that interesting and to think about? I mean, that he seems to be at least a little local.
Well, right. That's where's this road going to take you? Is this going up towards the other reservation, or is there anything between here and the reservation? Or just, I know it's between the two reservations, but
Well, between this is
yeah.
that ravine and that river area that I showed with the rocks.
Okay.
Yeah. So
But no buildings, nothing like that. It's just you exit one reservation to get to the other. Okay.
right. And until you get there, right, all of this area going in, it's probably a 20-mile, 25-mile stretch.
Wow. Okay.
It's just like it's just like this. And you see the refrigerator I was referring to over there on the left.
Right. Right.
Oh.
Yep.
So, Chris, what you're suggesting is that if you dumped contractor bags in this area, you might think that people weren't going to look into them. You might think that they just looked like work garbage that was being dumped, that kind of thing. Is that the idea?
Well, I didn't think of that one, Gary, and I love the way you're thinking. Okay. But what I was thinking is there was no question in my mind when I went up this road and I saw all this garbage off to the side that I'm thinking, okay, this guy's been here before.
Right.
And, so, but I love the way you're thinking, Gary. That was a brilliant thought about, is this a known place that it would have just blended in or that bag? But Dr. Burgess's idea earlier was this area is also, there are mountain lions, there are coyotes, there are all kinds of, animals that would have gotten to that bag quickly and spread it and tore it up all over the place.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it didn't look like we had indications of that. The authorities have not put it out there as well.
Chris, one of the reasons people do illegal dumping is that there are certain items left over from construction or house repair or whatever that you're not legally allowed to just put out with the trash. And I can't help but picture somebody who knows a thing or two about, I don't know, construction or contracting or trade work or something because of the construction bags. I can't get around that in my head. And I just keep picturing somebody who's got a vehicle that's just got everything you need in it, like tools and everything. I mean, and I picture almost like a panel van or something with like
Well, I was going to
space
say,
in the back.
this doesn't look like a road that you're going to take your Cadillac on. This has got to be a truck,
Oh,
pickup truck, or some kind of a truck. I agree.
and why contractor bags? And how does he know about this place where you dump things you're not supposed to, work trash and electronics and refrigerators and things like that, without being a local who knows a thing or two about that? I'm very suspicious that this is some kind of trade worker. And how many times have we seen that story? That's the kind of vehicle that's used and why you have certain kinds of bags and certain kind of tools and certain kinds of things in there, and I'm picturing this vehicle comes by and says to this lost soul that's walking along, "Where you going?" "Oh, I ran away. I'm trying to whatever." "Oh, come on in. I'm going that way. Come on in." And then does God knows what with her in the silence of that vehicle. I mean, but Anne, to your point, especially if there's an organized offender, she could have been abducted and taken somewhere for some time.
Right. I think that's more, if we get more information on the condition of the body,
Yeah.
that would be my thing, because it's 4 weeks you haven't accounted for.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think the locals are thinking that as well, and that
Yeah.
there's a secondary,
Yeah.
contact spot here somewhere.
Yeah.
So
And
sad.
And he wanted the bag to be found because he could have hidden it more in the bushes. Right. It was easily seen. I take it. The hikers easily saw the bags, and they
Hidden in
opened them
plain
up.
sight. Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Hidden in plain sight.
plain sight, yeah.
So what's that tell us about the offender, in your opinion, then? Because he wants it found. What's going on there?
Well, see, I wonder whether he's watching somewhere. A lot of times, did they have any cameras up or anything like that? Because they like to see how it's found and what the reaction would be. That's one of the reasons I think they come back. We have nothing in terms of was she clothed? Did she have that little pink and gray jersey? Did he take any kind of souvenirs? That would give us much more information on how invested he was in whatever it was he was going to do. Did he keep her for the 4 weeks? And then something happened and he had to get rid of her. All of those kinds of questions we can't answer, but those are things that we've certainly seen in cases before when we've had a chance to interview the offender.
Well, if I had to make a guess, Chris, about the personality structure of this offender, and this is a mixture of experience and intuition that's making me say this, but I think this is the kind of person who can really fake compassion in an individual, and this is the kind of person that I can envision that one day when he's caught might even be somebody who is trying to show sympathy toward the plight of people who get hurt like this. In other words, a kind of phony kind person who might say something like, "Oh, you're looking for that missing kid, that poor thing. I read about her in the papers. It broke my heart. I that's why I'm, I'm hanging out over here, because like, this is so heartbreaking, whatever, that kind of thing." Because I think there's a phony quality that would have been used to lure her. This is a person I think knows how to win the confidence of a child, right? And that's very important, because that's where, Chris, I really and Ann, I really wanted your thoughts on whether this was more organized, because I think this guy's got to have some skill. I don't think this is some deranged guy that you see him walking down the street and you go, like a kid would stay away from him. He's got to have something that makes you willing to get in a vehicle.
He's gotten away with this. So, of course, he's organized. I mean, he got away with it for 4 weeks. And then even when he gets rid of the body, he's gotten away with it. What are we into now? It's, it's still going on.
He's a helper. He's a helper guy, superficially.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That kind of person. I mean, you know what I mean, though? Because there's that more psychopathic quality where you can empathize, but you have no compassion. You fake caring about the person, and you go, "Oh, you look so lost. You must be so scared. I've got food. I've got whatever." But the goal is just to snatch the person.
This is interesting, Chris. Somebody is writing in here.
Yeah.
That it's a dangerous area. Snakes. All of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is an interesting from what Cherry
this one here is interesting too. There, can you help us a little bit more missing on the other girl missing? What help us understand which case you're referring to on that one, if you wouldn't mind. And so you go up this road and you see, I turned back around here, look to show you the other side of it. And you can see that there is no question this guy, and I think we're all in agreement it's a male, right?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Okay. And I think alone. I personally think alone. Yeah, I don't think this is a team.
Okay. And I don't see it originating from the group home in any way.
Right. I agree.
Because once she was out she is, at a high risk. And, according to the victim, right, continuum, there's a higher probability this is a stranger to her.
Right.
But when I'm walking back, the more I looked at this, the more I thought to myself, this person knows this area and he's very comfortable here. He's made this trip before, and keep me on the straight and narrow here. He's very familiar, and this could be his area of comfortability where he will maybe. I guess one of the bigger questions for me was, will he continue? I came to the conclusion he's not done.
No.
Evident of
right.
Evident of the fact that he is now in dismemberment. So let's talk a little bit about your research in dismemberment. Why is this so important to understand, especially for a juvenile?
Right, which is highly unusual, and she wasn't big enough that he had to worry about not being able to control the body. But something happened that she gets killed. I still go back to she's with him or with someone for 4 weeks, and then something goes very wrong. And so now he has to get rid of her. And why does he pick dismemberment? Because he could have just killed her and left her body, right? But he doesn't. Gary, in terms of the types of dismemberment, you've already mentioned one, just to get rid of the body. But then there's another that has to do with has a more sexual connotation to it, right? And then the third one has to do with what? What's the third one?
It's more like a psychotic person that's butchering a body for no reason. And then, of course, there are people that are doing it for what they see as practical reasons, like I want to eat part of the body, so I need to remove the arm, like a Jeffrey Dahmer kind of situation. I think it's important to emphasize that, and until you and I and Michael Stone came up with the definitions that are now used, I'm pleased to say, people interchangeably use the words dismemberment and mutilation. And it was important that we did that because it turns out that there are very different motives for doing those different things, right? So just to kind of put it out there very quickly, what we determined was that the word dismemberment should really be used when you're talking about the head, torso, arms, hands, pelvis, legs, or feet being removed or destroyed, because those are the larger sections of the body. And any brutalization or destruction of the smaller part of any of those larger parts is mutilation. So if you take someone's head, it's decapitation, but to destroy the eye is mutilation. Right. And mutilators tend to be much more bizarre and over the top, or angry, or frenzied, or keeping a body part for sexual reasons, or whatever, cannibalism. But dismemberers, we found in our work, were much more likely to be defensively getting rid of, cutting the body up to get rid of it. And more often than not, that's what you were saying. It's a very serial killer-like thing to do. And it has to do with trying to get rid of the body, particularly identifying parts. Think, for example, of accusations against Rex Heuermann. Rex Heuermann, if you read the bail document in that planning thing that he's accused of writing, he didn't only dismember when he advanced in learning how to kill, according to the accusations, but he was even cleaning the body with detergents and liquids and things to get rid of what was inside and all of that. I mean, that's the level of sophistication that some of these guys will go to. Some of them, one of the things Michael Stone and I predicted was that as the DNA and stuff gets better, it isn't going to be enough to dismember. You're going to start to see people setting bodies on fire or getting rid of them entirely because just a little trace of a person is enough. And so there's a kind of race between the technology and what the offenders are doing. So it's creating this kind of new evil where they're doing things that are more and more awful, partly just to outpace the technology.
Okay,
I remember.
let's give our audience a breather just for a minute, because you and I and Ann can talk about this stuff forever, but you know, you're at a level that we talk about behind the scenes, and
But
I want to be careful to everybody, but so and that's why I put this question up. It broke the conversation. I apologize, Gary, but I love you so much. You and Ann will just go for days, and next thing you know, people will be like, you know.
Well, then to answer the quick version of that is simply that I think this person was just simply trying to move and eliminate a body
and
based
she
on
did.
statistics.
There was a report, a news report, that she did have facial trauma.
Okay.
Okay. So to your point, right, Gary? No, continue your thought process.
No, that's really it. I mean, I just think the statistics would from our own work, and the fact that this was dismemberment and not mutilation suggests that this is that this is post-mortem. I would be willing to say that this was post-mortem. It wasn't part of torture, for example. Mutilation tends to be part of torture, but not dismembering a person, right? Very rare that. So I think it was post-mortem, and it was done as part of a defensive process.
Why dismember a child?
Yeah, that's
right. It's a really good point.
Unusual. Yeah,
it's unusual. I agree, and I mean, it's an interesting question, but I mean, I don't think. Let's put it this way: I don't think it was part of the psychosexual thrill to dismember I think the dismemberment is I did something to this victim that is incriminating, that a very particular thing, and that has to be kind of hidden in the butchery. Okay. So, markings or a essay, something like that, so that you're doing that to get rid of the evidence of it. I think the hands missing is fascinating.
Yeah, the hands and the arms.
That is
the face was still
really,
there.
really interesting.
Yeah, they should be able to do a cause of death if the head and the torso are there. But that the arms, we've seen situations where they have used the arms for and the hands for other things.
Oh, yes.
So they may have kept those, or did she have any jewelry or anything like that? So all of that has to be looked at. But he's really gotten away with it.
I think so.
This is an interesting thought. Anger towards the tribal nations?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Humiliation, anger. Right. Had they prevented something from, building things, or who knows?
Do you think he's watching?
I don't know.
I mean, I think my guess is that what is projected on. Go ahead, Ann, please.
No, it's a good question. We do know that the serial ones are going to be watching. If this is somebody that's done it before, is going to do it again. He wants to see what people are saying about it. So yes, in that capacity.
Definitely. I think this is a person who is projecting onto the victims vulnerability, helplessness, invisibility, etc., which tells you a great deal about how this guy must feel about himself. And this is a person, I think, who, probably, if I had to make a psychological guess, came himself from some kind of broken situation, broken home, loneliness, vulnerability, transience, whatever, and goes out and finds people who are like that and basically says, you're the fool, you're the loser, you're the one who dies, you're the one who's, because then it makes him feel powerful, that kind of thing. But I imagine that what's projected onto these people is, no one cared about me. I was invisible, whatever. I got to take whatever I get from the world. So, I mean, you picture an entitled guy, with a kind of pseudo sympathy because he's probably been there himself, that kind of thing. And who I think has a paraphilia. I really do. I think that this was the essence of this, was some kind of hebephilic sexual attraction to an inappropriate population. And I mean, wouldn't you say, Ann? I mean, this is not somebody who's going to have normal adult relationships with women.
I think we should kind of look at all possibilities. Could she be used for trafficking? Is this going to be?
That's an interesting question too.
and that is in the area. We know that from our research and from other research that they're highly risk. Indigenous young girls are high risk.
And by the way, you'll find interesting my work up here and with, the Navajo Nation is on one of the tribes up here, the cartels have penetrated.
Yeah.
And
That's what, yeah, I'm not going to, until got more information that there could be a gang involved in some way, more than one. And that one person does end up doing all this. But I think that I'm still stuck on the 4 weeks. Something went on for 4 weeks.
Yeah, something went on. Well, but I think that you're making a great point, and that we always have to keep in the back of our minds the idea that gang activity can mimic serial killer activity and all that, except the only difference is, my experience is that when you tend to dismember, mutilate, etc. in a gang, it's much more of like a communication or a message to it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I agree with that. Yeah.
So that then you would have to say, is she thrown into that particular area to be offensive to someone? Is there a reason you're leaving things partially visible? That kind of thing. Is it a weird attempt to draw attention to a cause? Because there are offenders, believe it or not, who will do that. It's strange, but I think you are 100% right that I think the safest thing to do is to say we're stuck at a crossroad in terms of profiling it. That it isn't, if it's an individual, it's a lot like we've been describing, like a sex offending, grooming, nasty, pseudo kind man, a loner. But then if you go the other direction, it could turn out that this is some kind of trafficking gang thing. And so I think we have to just sort of be safe and say it's one or the other right now. Yeah.
Right. And then if it's a trafficking situation, I think the cartels, I think, Chris, you're bringing that up, is very important.
Very important.
The fentanyl, was that something that they could lure her with, that she had mental health issues and wasn't getting medication? That her behavior is going to be difficult for them to manage, say this, and maybe the one person that dismembers her could have just been the one that they left her with. Who knows? I think that there's much more to this story here.
Yeah.
And I base that again on the fact that we don't know what happened for 4 weeks.
Yeah.
We only know what happened, that she left the group home, and then we know that she was found in the area that you've just been going over. In a very deserted, deserted certainly. I'd like to know whether it was at night or during the day. How much risk you always want to look at the risk of the killer too, that it was left so that it could be found versus it could have been hidden much easier if they really wanted to. He just wanted it found, and I think that the anger or the humiliation he wanted to, it's an issue with the tribes. It's an issue with the indigenous group, I think.
Well, one thing I don't want to open up this whole can of worms, but I do think it's important to ask is, as I understand it, Arizona has 9 border crossings, right?
It's a lot. Yeah.
Okay. And what does it border exactly?
Mexico.
Okay. So that's the other question I wanted to ask is there a vulnerability point near there where there could be the possibility of someone who has come over that is not on the radar or something?
It's a real problem. I was talking to you guys will find this funny, not funny, but sad. I talked to the cold case guys down there in Tucson. They have over 400 unsolved cold cases.
Oh, gee.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah. And most of that obviously is connected to the border.
Sure.
And so, to answer your question, the vulnerability sites, there are tremendous amounts. One thing that I would think about in, just keeping that as a possibility, right? That if it's
I think it's important.
Yeah, we put it over here on the other side of the board, but I am really interested in the fact that if it is a situation there with if it's a cartel problem or something to that effect, then that means there's other information we don't know potentially. But if we just stay in the lane of, if this is an essay, let's just go down that route for a minute. That this is a single guy, it's essay motivated, victim of opportunity, takes her to another location, does whatever he needs to do, holds her, and then eventually says, "Okay, I'm done." Why is the dismemberment in that individual's mind? Why does that come to the surface? I mean, Gary, you say that, what? What do you say?
That we know from our research that in people who are motivated that way, the butchery is not part of the psychosexual thrill or fantasy unless they're eating the body part or keeping a trophy. Jerry Bruto's keeping a foot, for example, things like that. Chances are it's done because you're eliminating some kind of evidence of something, or you're moving the body, and you have to put them in bags or smaller things to do that. And what I'm wondering about is if there was some period of keeping her and there were marks on her and things like that that had to be hidden or eliminated. Because, I mean, and if she was kept for a little while, the treatment wouldn't have been pretty. I mean, there would have been abuses to her that
Oh,
would be
yeah.
all over the body. Right.
Right. Yeah. But
So
we don't know
rope,
that.
ropes. I mean, you get rid of the hands and the arms. You can't see if she was bound, if there were ligature marks, things like that. He could have some kind of strange fetish that of something that he needs to do to the, and I think from our own research, it has to do with evidence destruction is the main reason we found for
Right.
this dismemberment.
So
Yeah.
go ahead, Dr. Burgess.
Well, I was just going to say that's why we needed more information on the actual condition of the body.
Exactly.
Because she could have been put into a bag intact, couldn't she? Or your point about she could have just been,
Tiny.
to use the FBI word, dumped, unless she didn't have any clothes on. I'd like to know why she might not have had any clothes on. That would tell us something. Tell us a lot.
Yeah, so let's shift gears then. So the second scenario, let's use a cartel scenario. That's obviously going to be a statement to debt owed or something to that effect,
Right.
within her circle of influence, somebody, somewhere. Would we all agree on that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Between
So those are really kind of the two scenarios that come to the top of the plate here.
Right.
Is there any other thoughts that come to either one of you that you think we should talk about here that we haven't talked about just yet? Because here's my plan.
Go ahead, Chris. I was going to say, yeah.
I want to circle back. I want to try to get hold of a little more information, maybe her uncle, and see if we can get her uncle to come on with us, and maybe get Victor and Greg involved in this conversation here. To where we can all, approach this from different angles.
Jeff Wood would be good too. If you think there's anything to any gang involvement, he's up to speed on some of those. So yeah,
he's the best.
Okay,
he's
so
as good as it gets.
That's kind of a direction that I'm thinking that we can go here and kind of make I'm going to try to see if we can get hold of the uncle, Emily's uncle, out of respect for the Apache tribe, to kind of bring a little bit more weight to the situation, as well as I'm waiting for a call back from some people.
Chris, do you know if there was any bad blood, whatever you want to call it, between the ongoing with the tribes, the Apache tribes, that there would be some kind of retaliation, that this is, something in that nature?
I know from firsthand knowledge, because I'm working with some folks, that they are definitely, there is a a narcotics problem, on the fentanyl problem, where
Okay.
they are approaching the tribes because, you know, they're independent. They're independent
Yeah.
nations,
Right.
and they operate under the radar of the government. And so there is a lot of luring going on of girls off of the reservations, and
Mm.
some of
Yeah.
that is payback in terms
Right.
of you owe me, we got her, that kind of
Interesting.
problem.
Yep.
And so I want to explore that a little bit more uh, with maybe the family members.
Sure.
And so to answer your question, yes, do I think that's a possibility? Absolutely, that could be a high probability that could also be into this problem. Go ahead.
And it really mimics the kind of offender we're envisioning. That's the trouble.
Mhm.
That a lot of times when you're wrong, it's because you didn't keep an open mind about the possibility of a gang thing because it can really be so brutal a lot of the time. One thing that we didn't touch on at all, Chris, because it's been so much nonsense about it out in the world, is I think that I just don't see any connection with the boy she was going to see.
Oh no, yeah,
No.
I think that's
Yeah.
absurd, that there was
Yeah.
anything to that. Because, people out in the world, they
Sure.
speculate, they say crazy things. You're talking about a kid himself, who I'm sure is devastated.
Well, and I absolutely, and I see this as, that predatorial apex predator guy. Even if it is a cartel thing, it's going to be an apex predator, right? I mean, I think
One or the other. Yeah.
and
Right.
but this idea of, I'm leaning more to, volume number 1 here first. It's if I
Me
was
too.
to do a 60 or 75-25 to the cartel, I'd give the cartel 25 and I'd give 75 to this apex predator.
Yes.
Okay. Yep.
The only reason is because it's between both tribes
Right.
and the contact point where she was. But it's intriguing. There are a lot of girls that have just kind of vanished out of that group home, as well as in the San Carlos Nation and the White Mountain Nation up here, and the Navajo Nation. So we've got, and the Hopis, we've got the Hopis, and there's a variety of different tribes up here that these girls are invisible.
Right. And they're expendable, and they could be watching. Someone could be watching, and as kids come out, because she certainly was not very, very different from someone that's, say, 17 or 18 and looks the age. She does not look. She looks like 14. I don't know which side she is, whether she's the young side of 14 or pushing 15. But I think that's all important. And she didn't wear makeup. She sounded like she just had jeans and a jersey kind of thing. So she wasn't in any way, the whole sexual thing might not have, and it could be that the dismemberment was to make a statement.
Good point.
If it were a gang thing or something, like it could be a communication dismemberment.
Yes,
We call
communication.
Right.
I think so. Yeah, if you want to follow
Or
that.
like a humiliation of her or something. Or it's possible. It's possible. I mean, the thing is, I doubt very severely. This is if somebody picked her up, that the person said, "How old are you, young lady?" In other words, it's all about how old she looked. And I don't think anybody could look at this girl and not think she was a minor. I mean,
Right,
she's clearly a child.
right.
And this is the kind of person that if she had lived to adulthood, people would have always thought she was young. I think she's so petite that she will probably have looked like a child for a long time. You know what I mean? Even at 20 years old, she's tiny, absolutely tiny. And I cannot help but think that if it doesn't turn out to be some organizational thing like that, it's extremely difficult to think this wasn't a paraphilic crime on the part of a person with a perverse kind of interest in her. I just really think we need an autopsy, that kind of thing. I really want to know what markings were on her and stuff like that. I have to say that I think part of the reason the hands and the arms, are missing it. I think there would have been a lot of markings on them that would have been alarming to the offender, that they could be incriminating, maybe ligature marks or burns, or maybe he had clawed at her or something, where he was worried about leaving DNA or something like that. Because
Sure.
the thing that tends to be missing in a dismembered body with these guys is where you focused in such a way that you think you've left evidence, or that there's something identifying to the person. And that really raises some questions about what the heck happened to her. I think she was bound, and that's my sense, is that there was something binding the hands and the arms. And if she was kept, I mean, you're picturing that she would have been kept somewhere like a home or a house, a building, or in a vehicle.
If she's trafficked, she could be anywhere.
Right. She could be anywhere.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
yeah. Awful.
Well,
It's such an awful story. And, but I'm so happy to see Chris drawing attention to it like this,
yeah,
because
an important case, Chris. It's very
it's
important.
so important. Yeah. And our foundation, we're all members of the Cold Case Foundation, has this special relationship with the indigenous
Sure.
peoples, right? And Chris, do you want to talk a little bit about what our foundation does with Native people?
well, I mean, we were tapped on to be the training arm for the under Operation Lady Justice, which was a DOJ initiative that started in 2019. And then from there, they assembled the first ever all Native American homicide task force. And we've talked about this before, to my audience anyway, but we were asked to be basically the instructing arm to the first ever all Native American task force. And we did that training in various places across the country. We started in Albuquerque at the BIA headquarters. Then we went up to South Dakota, North Dakota, into the training academies. And the goal was to bring Native American police to a single source training opportunity. And then they would take it back, and get into it. And then simultaneously, we would give them the skill set to where they could coordinate, communicate with the FBI and other agencies that they had cross-reference to. And so that's it in a nutshell. And we've been doing that for almost 5 years. In fact, I just got back from Ada, Oklahoma with Chickasaw Nation about a month ago, working with that team out there and others. But that said, they ran out of money, the government, of course. And so a lot of the initial teams, were shifted over into the MMIW units, the homicide units. And that's what we're seeing right now. And this agent Summers, who's working Emily's case, he's a great guy, smart guy, tremendous amount of knowledge. And so I'm convinced that these folks working in conjunction with the FBI and others are going to solve this one.
It's wonderful. It's really important. Yeah, and they also, Chris, they have the new initiative just came out in February 25th, was the Operation Spirit Return.
Yes.
And that's very, very important. I know this is not one of those cases they're going after 20, trying to get 20, but it's an important initiative.
Great point.
That was just so they're not closing down. I think that the current administration is concerned about the Native American indigenous group. So keep at it.
Yeah, no, it's been an honor. I mean, it really has. And, at the same time, it's just so sad.
So sad.
Because there are so many women and men or, younger kids that have just vanished. They have vanished. I mean, I think the numbers run high into almost past 10,000 in totality over all the, but more than I do on that, Dr. Burgess. I mean, statistically, as you guys have been studying this,
it's really bad. It's really, really bad. Yeah.
That's why, I was so grateful that, the president at the time, came in and said, look, we got to throw money at this thing. And And now they're redoing it. They're doing it again and again. So the money hasn't run out completely. I guess it got shifted around now. It's under the Department of Indian Affairs and BIA. And one of the things we needed to communicate to everybody was they weren't talking to each other. You had tribal police, you had BIA, you had FBI, and nobody knew what the left hand or the right hand was doing.
Yeah.
And so by putting this initiative together, it's put everybody in the same room.
Right.
And everybody can now communicate.
Yeah. But I think, Chris, even that work and even you talking about it and the work that is being done at Boston College to draw attention, I mean, it's very humanizing to a people that have spent many, many, many decades feeling as if they are second-class citizens in the eyes of the justice system.
Yeah.
And if that. And, I think what all of this is drawing attention to is the idea that, these are human beings, for God's sake.
I have a
And
good
I mean, you
friend.
see that poor girl? I mean, was an adorable kid. They described her as being, a person that one of the things I found very moving was that somebody described her as being a person that if you were cruel to her, reacted by smiling at you. That she had that quality of being a person who disarmed you by being sweet to you. And that gives me an idea, by the way, about her, because I've seen that in clients and patients for many years, that people who come from neglect or abuse or poverty or whatever, especially children who don't have stable homes or are orphans or foster children or whatever, they learn to be very ingratiating and very kind and so forth, because it's all about, if someone likes me, somebody will take care of me. And, it's a quality you see even in people who have dependent personalities, is that they're sort of unusually attractive or unusually sweet, because they just want people to take care of them. And, so it's like that these kind of people, that they're like the loveliest human beings in the world.
Yep.
And then they're preyed upon because
And,
their trust of other
and
people, can hurt
to
them.
dovetail into that thought process,
Yeah.
is I have a good friend that I met out in the White Mountain Apache Tribe up there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to say who he is because people will know him. And
Okay.
but he always says, whenever I go out to the res out there, he says, "Where's my candy?"
Mm.
And he loves these little Hershey Kisses, those little, or those miniature things, right? And him and his brother out there, and they are the most wonderful human beings you will meet. I mean, I've sat with their mom, and they've taught me about, the land, Father Sky, Mother Earth. They've taught me about just in the moment, for lack of a better term, in the moment. And at the end of these conversations, he'll look at me and he'll say, "Now, when you come back, bring the candy."
Bring the kisses.
Bring the candy.
Wow.
Well, what a wonderful conversation tonight, you guys. It's and everybody, thank you so much for being in our chat this evening. We're going to reconvene this for sure. I've got a couple of goals here, but I'd like to get, maybe Jeff, Victor, yourselves again, and Greg, and we kind of reassemble this. And if I can get hold of a family member, I'd like to hear a little bit more about.
That would be good. Yeah,
try to. That will help them.
Chris, real quick, the other thing I think that's important is that one of the reservations or one of the tribes, or maybe both of them, have offered a reward.
Yeah.
So that they're really anxious to get this solved.
Yeah, and if we solve it, the reward stays at the tribe. We don't need the reward.
No,
but
right.
if somebody else solves it, they can give it to the tribe, but or to whatever. But
whatever. But
so far as okay, and so far as our my thought process anyway, we're here for Emily, and we're here to help if we can make that happen. And if you haven't bought these two books, and Ann's new book is coming out. What's the name of it, Ann?
The Expert Witness. It's all my work in the courtroom.
Okay, the Expert Witness, and if you didn't know, she also testified in the Menendez trial
Right. Yeah,
back in the
that's
day.
coming up in April, a decision on that.
I know that's just crazy. But also see Dr. Gary's book here, The New Evil. And we're so grateful to each and every one of you who are always here for us on Sunday night. You're so special to our mods. Thank you, Mimi J2, Teresa M, Maui Girl, Miss Sophia, and Laura. Laura's been a little sick. She's been dealing with some colds, so please keep her in your prayers. And everybody else, we're so grateful.
Debbie sent me an email saying so I say a shout out to Debbie.
Okay, Debbie. Shout out to Debbie. Woo, 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 woo. Okay. And if it's your birthday, happy birthday. Or if you got one coming up this week, we're so grateful. But anyway, keep the faith. And thank you so much. Keep Emily in her prayers and all of the nations, of these tribes in your prayers as well. So aloha. Let's go to Hawaii and we'll see you on the next one.
Hard working every day, I'm stressed out 24/7, babe. No timeouts, wish we could fly away. You and I go to our favorite place. Oh yeah, make special memories together. I'll be your company now and forever. I say we fly away. You and me go to our favorite place. Feeling the sun on my face in Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. I need a summer breeze, some fresh air to put my mind at ease. No cares. You wanna come with me? Me and you go to our favorite tree. Are you ready now? We jump on a plane now. We're taking away. Yeah, we're taking away. Don't hesitate now. We're taking away. Yeah, we're taking away. We'll never come down. We're going